I started to look through history. Now, I'm not a very educated man, just so all of you know. I'm not. I'm not the sharpest pencil in the box, not the brightest bulb in the chandelier. I did not go to university. People always ask me, did you go to university or college? And I always say, yeah, I walk through there on my way to work every day. So I'm not the sharpest pencil in the box. But I'm one of those guys that is kind of self-educated. So I went back and did an exploration of history. What were the key ingredients to building a great place to live in? And what I found that historians and experts said consistently, was that it was people like you. People like you who were the thread. And that leaders came and went, but people like you dedicated themselves to building something special for people they'd never see, people they'd never meet, people they'd never talk to, people that wouldn't even know that they did the work. That's kind of like your situation. People don't know what you do. John Q. Public in Fort McMurray, region of Wood Buffalo, don't necessarily know what you do. And yet, because of the plows that you run, they're safe. Or the planning that you do, they're organized. Or they're eventually, when it's all done, their travel time to work is shortened. And they have a better experience. That might not be today, but someday. Or they can interface with their institution of government and it's a pleasant experience, which engenders trust, which is the key to a free society. So my journey to understand your importance and value in building a thriving community was not a direct path. It was a circuitous route. It took me some time to get it, but I get it now. I understand how incredibly valuable you are, both individually and in the collective. And about 4 years ago, I made a commitment to talk to as many public servants across North America as I possibly could. To one, try to get them to understand the valuable and important role that they play, and then call them to that higher purpose and calling. Call them to that. Because I thought it was the key to taking on the challenges that we face today in our communities. But I want you to know that I didn't come to that realization immediately. It took me some time. But now I understand it. I understand how valuable and important you are. But do you understand that? Go ahead, Jana. Yeah? Yeah. All done? There you go.
If anyone missed it, they can just email me.
So this program for the community tracks and the high school and the college people is one thing. But for you, it's a whole different thing. You are building a community. And how many people in the roles that you play across the country or anywhere in the world have the opportunity that you have? You're a part of building something. And how many of you know that can be frustrating? How many of you know that can make you want to pull your hair out if you have any? Like me, I don't have any. How do you know that a man had a mullet when he was a kid? Does anybody know? How do you know that if a man had a mullet? If a man is bald or balding at this age, then you know he had a mullet. And you say, well, how's that? Because God looks down and says, if you can't take care of it, I'm taking it away. No, that's not true. That's not true. So all the bald guys are like, hey, wait a minute, I have a mullet. So for you, listen now. So for you, you have an opportunity that only comes once in a lifetime. The challenge is, in times of rapid growth, in times of extreme change, you're in extreme change here. Extreme. It's going to be frustrating, it's going to be difficult, it's going to be hard. Now let's take that even a step further. Mid-level leaders. Mid-level leaders in any organization are under unusual pressure. Because you have executive leaders and elected officials that provide direction, vision, whatever. And then you have frontline employees. And then you have somebody in the middle. All of you. How many of you have ever been caught in what I call the crunch? Who can relate to what I'm talking about right now? I don't have to say another word. I just give you the visual and say the word crunch, and you're like, totally get it, Ian. Totally get it. So look at this sequence. You have an opportunity to build a community that I think could be a defining community in the 21st century. Of all the reasons that I said earlier, and I can give you a whole bunch of other reasons that I've studied that I think that to be true. I believe it I believed it a year ago, a year and a half ago. I believe it today. We need leaders. Municipalities, the municipal government of any community is key because you touch every citizen from cradle to grave. And if you do an exploration of history, that's validated of all the thriving communities. Then within that, you specifically are going through extreme change every day. And that trend is not going to reside. It's going to it's not going to slow. It's going to continue. That trajectory. And then within that, you're the key to us being successful. Now, why is that important for you to know? So you know how valuable you are. I didn't say you get treated like it. I didn't say people understood it. I didn't say people acknowledge it. And I didn't say you're going to get a street named after you. And I didn't say you're going to get your name on the side of a building. I'm just telling you what I believe. So you know where my heart is. So over the next 15 weeks, when you hear me talking crazy crap that you're like, what in the hell is he talking about? You'll understand where my heart is. My heart is that you are incredibly important. And as you get a little bit better at what you do, all of that ripple goes the other way. And all of a sudden, the cumulative effect of all 60 or 50, I think it's 60, all 60 of the mid-level leaders that are going through this program, the cumulative effect of you getting better, a little bit better tomorrow than you were yesterday, is that we will ripple out to a better community. Now, you may not have the faith to see that. You may not have the faith to see that, but I do. So that backdrop then leads us to talk about today. If I would have had the time, Bill, I would have talked to every one of you before the program began. Because that's probably the best way to do it. If I understand what you really want out of this thing, if I understand what you really are hoping to gain. How many of you have answered the 3 questions so far? The first 3 questions. Not good enough. Answer those first 3 questions. I read every one of them because it tells me what you want. And then as the program goes along, I make sure I'm keeping and reviewing those 3 questions. How many of you know what I'm talking about? The 3 questions you got in the initial invitation. Who can tell me why I asked you those 3 questions? Why did I ask you the 3 questions?
To work on the skills that we're asking for.
Yeah, so I make sure you get what you want.
That's what you said in the email back.
That's right. It's a user-driven process. Now, some of you might write me something and say something off the wall that I can't provide you. And in that case, I'm going to say, I can't provide you this. But make no mistake, I read every single one of those things. Everything you email me, I read. Now, that's why it does take some time for me to respond, because there's 400 of you. And if I'm going to commit to not downloading that to my staff and I reading everyone, it does take me some time. So forgive me. It does take me some time sometimes. But I read them to ensure that I know your expectations. So don't just blow that off. And a couple of you, and you know who you are, I kicked it back to you and said, you're blowing me off. You're just answering these questions to check it off your checklist and just giving me some babble. I hope to improve. What the heck does that mean? Hope to improve on what? And then you responded back and you know who you are. So that helped me to understand you and your mindset and what you want to learn. But now I want you to understand my mindset. So I'm going to share with you my assumptions of you so that you understand where I'm coming from for the balance of our 15 weeks together. Assumption number 1, write it down, please. I'm assuming that I'm dealing with professionals. I'm assuming this is a conversation with professionals. Who can tell me what the word professional means? To you, what does it mean to you? Professional. Words are important, but sometimes your definition and my definition might be different. So let's make sure we clarify, what does professional mean to you? Somebody, give me some words that would define in your mind a professional.
Expertise.
Okay, that there's some expertise. I'm assuming I'm dealing with people that have some expertise.
It's based on some sort of ethics.
So they've got some kind of professional code of conduct, right? What's that?
Education.
They're educated. Although I would say this, how many of you have met a bunch of people with fancy letters after their name that are completely unprofessional? Right? So that doesn't necessarily define professional, but it can be a contributing factor. What else is a professional?
Appropriate to the context
Oh.
of the service they're delivering.
So they have skills, attributes, competencies that would be appropriate to their level of authority, right? Or could be, because we all have experienced people who don't have that to their level of authority. Somebody else, professional.
They're committed.
They're committed. There's a deep commitment I learned professionalism from busboys, maids, valet attendants. Maria Amazola taught me professionalism. She was from Ecuador. She cleaned 15 toilets a day in the big hotel casino that I help run. And her rooms were immaculate. And I asked her one time, I said, Maria, through a translator, why are you so phenomenal at what you do? And she said, well, with all due respect, sir, I don't work for you. I don't like that answer. And then she said this, and I don't work for the gentleman that owned the place, Mr. Carano. I don't work for him either. And I said, okay, I'm not following you here. And she said, I do my work unto God. And I thought, whoa, what does she mean? And if you take it out of its religious context, what she means is, I do my work because I do my work for me, and it's going to be great. And if I'm cleaning 15 toilets a day, I'm cleaning 15 toilets a day great. How many of you agree with me? That's a professional. That's a professional. That's what you're talking about. That's a professional. So my assumption is I'm dealing with a bunch of professionals. How about this? Does a professional take their own personal development and growth seriously? Yes or no? Even if what they do is, they make something with their hands. They're a craftsman or a craftsperson. They take great pride in the thing that they make. That's who I thought I was going to hang out with for 15 weeks. Well, that's not me, Ian. That's not the attitude I walked in the door with. I walked in the door with the attitude of, crap, I got to be here. And Well, I don't know how you walked in the door. I'm just telling you what I think of you. And I'll keep thinking that till you prove me wrong. How many say that's reasonable? I'm going to keep thinking that about you till you show me otherwise. Second thing I assumed about you. I'm assuming you're here because you want to do something great. So write that down. I'm assuming you're in this room, you're a part of the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, you've chosen to work in the public sector because you want to do something great. No, Ian, I did it because there was employment nowhere else. Well, I don't know about that, and I don't care about that. Or I do it because of the benefits or the opportunity, or I'm only going to be in Fort McMurray a year. How many of you have that t-shirt? And then the next thing you know, a life. A life. But let me show you the nuance of this great. I'm assuming that you want to do something great with your life. I'm assuming I'm spending 15 weeks with people that want to do something great with their life. That understand that in the role that you play in serving the public, that you have an exponential impact. That even if all you do is move paper from here to there, somewhere in some back area, or you supervise people that do that, eventually it works its way out to John Q. Public. And that's noble and honorable work. But I also assume that you want to do something great for yourself, for your coworkers, for your family, for the community, and I'm even assuming you want to do something great for people who haven't even been born yet. Because some of the roles that you play have a generational impact. Some of you in planning and others have a generational impact. And certainly the cumulative of what you do as a municipality has a generational impact. How many of you would agree with that? So I'm assuming you want to do something great. And you know the heavy burden and responsibility of working in the public sector is. Would you agree with me on a side note that all this noble talk that I'm laying down about the public sector may have been forgotten over the years? Yeah, I think it has. It's been forgotten by John Q. Public, and unfortunately it's been forgotten by oftentimes people within. But it's what I feel in my gut, in my heart. I believe that I'm dealing with and hanging out with people that want to do something great and want to build something great. And yeah, you can't get into the damn TD Bank. Every time I come here, I can't get into the damn TD Bank. And yeah, I step in a puddle. I stepped in a puddle today. And yeah, it's all congested. And if you don't start the drive down the hill at 4 o'clock in the morning, you won't get down. And I don't even live here and I know this stuff, Rick. But you know what? Those are the pains of building a community from scratch. And who gets that chance? Not too often, man. And who will be able to look back and point and say, I helped build that? That's pretty cool, man. That's really cool. Finally, number 3, my third assumption. My third assumption was that I was going to hang out for 15 weeks with people that would actually do it. So you can write try it or do it. So in other words, that you're not just going to take this material, put it in your fancy binder, fold it up, put it in your desk, then come and hang out with me for an hour and 45 minutes every 3 weeks and then put it in your desk. That this is going to be a journey for you. That this is going to be a moment in time where you'll say, okay, man, I'm in. I'll give a maximum effort and I'll try some of the nonsense he's laying down. And the manifestation of that will be that I'm going to physically and tangibly ask you over the coming weeks to pick something out and make a commitment to improve it. Because otherwise, this is a waste of time. Otherwise, the taxpayer's being fooled. Otherwise, you're being fooled. If 60 of us don't all pick out at least one thing and try to get better at it and physically commit to it, you will write it down. You will give it to me. They don't call it boot camp for nothing. That's not a marketing slogan. And you're going to tell me what you're going to get better at. And then you and I are going to get better at it. And you're going to give me permission to pat you on the back, kick you in the bum, not literally any of you HR people, not EDSS. What does that even mean? Somebody talked to Sadir, and I'm like, human resources, he's like, Ian, it's EDSS, SSSSSS. I'm like, I don't even know what that means, Sadir. What does that even mean, right? EDSS. Anybody from EDSS? No. Jana left, so I can say these things. But anyways, my point is that if we're going to be accountable for the time and energy that we're putting in, if every one of us picks out one thing, commits to doing it, has a plan for improvement, and I'll hold you accountable to it, if 60 of us get better, 60 of us in mid-level, would you agree with me on the 16th week we have an opportunity to have a better organization? Yeah. So that's the strategy, as simple as it might seem. All of you and the 100 in the afternoon, so 160 of you are all going to pick out something, and we're going to get better at it over a 15-week period. For that to be real, though, you're going to have to tell me what the one thing is. And I'm going to have to follow up with you and be like, hey, how you doing on that thing? So, I'm assuming you want to do something great. I'm assuming that you're a professional. I'm assuming you'll try something. Would you say these are reasonable assumptions of you? Raise your hand if you would concur, if these are reasonable assumptions. Okay, well now you know where I'm coming from. You know where I'm coming from philosophically, you know where I'm coming from in my heart, and now you know where I'm coming from as far as my assumptions of you go. Look at the big bubble there at the bottom. You don't need to be sick to get better. Let's be clear. Sir, you've probably forgotten more about what you know than I'll ever know, or what you do than I'll ever know. You probably are 100 times more knowledgeable and many subjects than I. So this is not a sage on the stage approach. I'm not some sage on a stage. Have we done some pretty cool things? We've done some pretty cool things. Have we done a bunch of stuff that's never been done before? 7 things that have never been done before. Projects, programs, initiatives, and the like. Sure, we've done some great things. But you know what? I've been broke twice. I've had companies fail twice. I've lost everything twice. How many of you know my wife should have kicked me to the curb a long time ago? Thank you very much, ma'am. Appreciate that. She sort of enthusiastically threw up her arm. Thank you so much. Okay, we all have our flaws and foibles and challenges. But this thing called leadership, I get that. And I get it in the context of the 21st century. Proof of that, we've done a whole, just Google it. Just Google it. You know, today's day and age, just Google it and see the cool things that we've done. And is that because I'm smart? No, because there's some basic principles that are effective today. And that's what we'll attempt to share with you. Some competencies, some leadership competencies that are effective in these changing times. And that's an important caveat, these changing times. All right, flip the page. So, on this page right here. So what can you expect? What can you expect? Well, when Glenn and Brian and Joanne and the rest, Sadir and everybody were like, hey, we want you to do this incredible program, I think one of the reasons they said it is because they knew that we had built some learning models that were very unique. You're not the first time we've dealt with public sector people. 28,000 public sector employees have gone through our programs on both sides of the North American border. Thousands, literally. Whole cities. Every employee from CAO all the way to frontline. So we get this thing, and we have developed a learning model. Most of these programs suck. Excuse my language. They are horrible. How many of you have ever been to a seminar, read a book, listened to a tape, and 7 to 10 days later, nothing changed? How many of you have been involved in training sessions where nothing changed? Why? Because they don't understand the basic fundamentals of human learning. 80% of your behavior is unconscious, sir. Write that down, guys. 80% of your behavior is unconscious. And this is a goofy room, so I got to go up and down on the stage. 80% of your behavior is unconscious. 80%. 80% of your behavior is unconscious. So when you go to that workshop, sir, and you hear somebody talk, and you do those exercises, the likelihood of something changing is minimal at best because 80% of your behavior is unconscious. It's better known as a what? What's it better known as? It's better known as a habit. So after you leave that workshop, after you listen to that tape, after you read that book, nothing changes because there's no process for changing. There's no model for changing. There's no reinforcement for changing. So we had to build something that would assure, or at least give the highest level of assurance, that you would be better at the end than you were at the beginning. And we had to take behavioral science and educational learning into consideration. But we also had to take into consideration that you're busy as heck and you don't have a lot of time. So how could we do that? Well, we created what we call this change continuum, and they're based on two things: 21 days to establish a habit and a blended learning approach. That's why this thing is set up in 3-week blocks. So every 3 weeks, we're going to meet like this. I'm going to present some concepts. And then for 21 days, we're going to reinforce those concepts. How? Email, video, text, and the like. So for 21 days, we take a concept and we reinforce it with all of the little techniques that technology provides today. That's why it's so important that you create a username and password so that you can get that email on Monday morning. So on Monday morning, coming up, you're going to get an email from me. It's going to have some text. It's going to have a little short video. It might have an exercise every once in a while. Why? That's the second piece of this change continuum, blended learning. Some of you in the room learn by hearing. Like right now, you're totally into it. You're like, oh yeah, Chubby Brown Man, you're so good. We love you. You're great. I'm the Chubby Brown Man. Woo, love you, love you. Others of you are like, he's really annoying. He's really bothering me. I'd rather just read all this. Can't I just go back to my office and download the document and read it? How many of you know that guy? So that's because we all learn differently. Others of you, you would rather just get the information, not have somebody talk, and you like to talk amongst yourselves. So some of you learn by reading, some of you learn by hearing, some of you learn by doing, some of you learn by thinking, some of you learn by dialogue. So we have to make sure we utilize a blended learning approach so that all of the learning modalities are hit, so that we have a better chance that you'll actually take in the information. So because there's 80% of your unconscious behavior, 80% of your behavior is unconscious, it's deeply rooted, there must be some kind of process to help you move from here to there. We've set up this change continuum based on 21 days to establish a habit and a blended learning approach. How do we do that? That's why there's a learning portal. There were some participants, RMWB participants, who, through the last session, that never physically came. Oh, Ian, we don't have to physically come? I would prefer if you physically came, but if you're not able to come, every single thing we do is available on that learning portal. Tim is filming right now. Everybody say hi, Tim.
Hi, Tim.
Tim is filming right now, and in literally an hour and a half, 2 hours, it'll be available on the learning portal. Every single thing that we do will be available on the learning portal. And does anybody know how long it will be available to you? Every email, every document, every video, everything will be available to you in the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo. Does anybody know? Forever. Forever. Well, Ian, would it be okay if I use one of these exercises that we learned in week 12 with my Girl Guides group? I think it would be good for them. Yes. Ian, would it be okay if I use it with my minor hockey league board? Yes. Ian, would it be okay if I use this with my kids at home? Yes. We're trying to increase the leadership capacity of the whole community. So the whole point here is that all the information is there for you to use forever. That was why I looked back at everybody and said, why are we doing it again? It's supposed to be a tool that you can use forever. Well, we just like the Chubby Brown Man. Will you come back to Fort McMurray? Yes, in the spring. So my point is that use this. Now, you as mid-level leaders, when you bring a new employee on board, you can have them go through it because it'll all be archived. You can mold it and tweak it and maybe just pick out the best parts that you like to work with employees. So this should be a viable and usable tool that you can take and use in all kinds of different ways when the 15 weeks are done. Does this make sense to everyone? Yes. And would you also agree with me, now we're talking about a reasonable use of taxpayers' resources, yes or no? This isn't just some flavor of the month. Let's bring in another guy to Fort McMurray, region of Wood Buffalo. He does his song and dance, makes a little bit of money, and flies out of town. And to that end, some of you in this room know that my wife and I have already philanthropically donated to this community. And we've started a number of programs in this community because we're not here and gone. I believe in this place. I believe in this place. I believe that this could be something special. So my point is, we had to build a program that would back up that belief. So you can expect a program that has some thought and some depth, not just in its content, but in its framework for learning. Any questions about the change continuum or the educational process? Any questions about that? It's really important that you understand it to get the full impact. So at the beginning of the 21 days, we introduce information. Then we reinforce it for that 21 days through various approaches. Now, one component that I want to really clarify, that's the coaching session. How many of you saw that in the documentation? Or how many of you actually watched the orientation video? Oh, really? That makes me feel so good. Even if you lied, I don't care. It makes me feel good. Then you know that there's this coaching session. Now, some people last time used it really, really well, and some people didn't. The point of the coaching session is this. I'm here. I don't understand. I'm here. Ask me your question. So in the last couple weeks, you had a problem with an employee, ask me about it. Don't say their name, don't say your name, but ask me. Having a problem with your boss, don't know how to manage your boss, ask me. I'm here for an hour. Every 3 weeks, you just ask me. Well, how do we get to see you? Live video streaming, I'm there on your desktop, and for an hour, I'm available to you to answer any question you might have. You can email in your question, you can text in your question, you can Facebook in your question, you can Twitter in your question. Just ask me your question. And I gotta believe that in these times of extreme change, in these times where everyone's stretched thin, wouldn't you like to have somebody you could ask questions of anonymously? How many would say yes? Then use it. I also know that not all of you will be able to participate in those coaching sessions. I get that, and that's why it's archived, and you can watch it in your jammies on a Sunday morning or whatever. But please, we want to use those coaching sessions to be a resource for you when you don't know what to do, when you don't have a strategy, and especially as a mid-level leader, it's difficult to seek people out. You can't leak up because then you show weakness and people are concerned that you don't know what the heck you're doing. You can't leak down. Well, that's not a good metaphor. Forget about that metaphor. You can't talk to people below you because then you're not an appropriate manager. And if you leak sideways, then your peers think you're complaining. So it's supposed to be a release valve for you to get some insight and wisdom. Now, you might not always like my answers, but at least you have, someone you can ask. That's the model, the learning model. What are we going to learn? You're going to learn 5 competencies of what we think is today's effective leader. They're listed. I'm not going to go into the next 2 pages, but this green page explains the science behind the learning model. Now, from now on, listen to me. From now on, anytime EDSSSSSSS or anybody else comes and says, you're going to learn something, look back at them and say, what's the process for change? Because I'm not just going to some workshop and there's no process for follow-up and support. Now, I'm not saying that to be a malcontent. I'm saying that because that's reasonable. What's the process for change? Here's the science behind it. Underlying now, take this a step further to your leadership. That's why when you send out a memo, nothing changes. That's why when you sit down and have a little meeting with your team and you wonder why they're not doing it different tomorrow morning, nothing changes. Because 80% of their behavior is unconscious as well and deeply rooted. So you're going to have to use a blended learning model, and you're probably going to have to take 21 days to reinforce it. Does that make sense? So as much as I'm talking to you about a learning model, I'm also starting to instill some of the principles of being an effective agent of change within an incredibly tumultuous dynamic. You're understanding the principles of changing. And one of the other reasons that I want you to pick out one thing and get a little bit better at it is so you become an expert at changing. There is no safety and security in things staying the same. No safety and security in things staying the same. There's only safety and security in your capacity to adapt and overcome. So one of the things I hope you leave the 15 weeks with is this: I know how to change. I know how to change me, and I know how to change the stuff around me. Do you think those would be valuable skills to have in your toolkit? Yeah. So you're starting to begin that journey now because you're understanding, or I'm starting to expose you to the principles of change. The competencies came out of a think tank that I was a part of, which just in its essence is the most ridiculous thing that could ever come out of my mouth. Ian Hill, think tank. That is ridiculous. They must have been drunk. I think they were drunk, young lady. They were drunk. They were like, hey, let's get somebody that's totally not belong here. Let's bring that guy in. That would be me. That think tank did an exploration of what are the keys to leading someone today. And then we took those ideas and we deployed them in 160 communities all across North America, mostly in Canada, and they work. And now we've taught them to thousands upon thousands of people, and I know they work. Competencies, 5 competencies of an effective leader. Agent of change. Do you know how to change something? Do you know how to change something? And they're on the next page. But can you change you, and can you change your environment, and do you have the skills and the attributes to do so? Systems thinking. Big picture, holistic systems thinking. You will not make it in the 21st century unless you have great systems. There's not enough time, energy, or effort at your disposal to get done everything you need to get done. You're a dad, you're a mom. You're a worker, you're a boss. You're somebody's kid. You're somebody's friend. You play roles outside of the 4 walls of the municipality. You have your own time and your own energy. How many agree with me? Not enough time, energy, or effort to get done everything you're responsible for in life today. The only way you're going to make it is systems. And we're going to look at the teachings of Archimedes, some of you engineers in the room. Archimedes and his fulcrum and lever. He said, give me a place to stand and I will move the world. Fulcrum and lever. And his compound pulley. He had just great systems. And whether it's a system of delegation, whether it's a system of motivation, whether it's a system of dealing with a poor performing employee, or whether it's your own time management, you better have great systems. And so we'll talk about systems. Third, catalyst for responsibility. Catalyst for responsibility. Do you know how to get another human being to take more responsibility than they were yesterday and like it? How many of you know it's the and like it part? Well, we're going to talk about that. How do you do that? Continuous improvement. How do we keep this thing going? And then effective planning, what I call the engagement approach to planning. Getting all stakeholders involved, tapping into the collective intelligence, and generating outside-the-box thinking, because you have the ability to engage people in the planning process. And whether that plan is solve a problem or whether that's a municipal plan. Those are the competencies that we're going to teach you. 3 weeks at a time. Introduce one, walk it out. Introduce one, walk it out. Introduce one, walk it out. This first 3 weeks, why is it called Ignite the Fire? Ian, that is the goofiest thing I've ever heard. Why is this called Ignite the Fire, the first 3 weeks? That is trite, dumb, and silly. Inertia. Who can tell me of inertia? What's inertia? What's inertia?
Momentum.
Okay, momentum. Not exactly, but what's inertia?
A body in motion will just deteriorate down to where it almost stops.
Okay, the thing in motion, the law of motion of inertia says that a thing on a certain trajectory will what? Stay on that trajectory. And that a thing in what? Place will stay in place. That's the physical law of motion of inertia. Communities, there's inertia in communities. There's inertia in your departments. Well, how does that manifest itself? I don't know, it's just what we do around here. That's called inertia. Just what we do around here. And guess what? You have inertia in your life. That thing that you have just resigned yourself to the fact that that's not changing in you, that's called inertia. That's the physical law of motion. That thing in place tends to stay in place. And if I wanted to overcome inertia, what do I have to do? I have to apply a force that's stronger than the one being applied today. So the first 3 weeks, we ignite the fire. Where does that come from? It comes from the space shuttle down in the States. That its energy, 87% of its energy must be exerted in the first 3 minutes to overcome inertia. Now, how are we going to do that? This first 3 weeks, I'm going to have you do some exercises. You're going to look introspectively within yourself. You're going to figure out how you became the leader that you are today. Where did that 80% of unconscious behavior come from? Did it come from your dad? Did it come from your mom? Did it come from your coach? Did it come from your teacher? Did it come from your uncle? Did it come from your first boss, your worst boss, your best boss? How did you become who you are today? Because if you don't figure that out, how are you going to journey forward? How many say that makes sense? So a lot of questions in this first 3 weeks, a lot of introspection in the first 3 weeks, looking within you. So we're going to ignite by looking internal. We're going to get ourselves ready to learn the competencies by doing some self-exploration and understand how did I become the leader that I am. Now, for some of you, you intentionally developed your leadership style. You did. You went to a class, you went to a school, you went to a whatever. You had a mentor, and you intentionally developed it. Others of you, it has organically developed over a period of time and taken hold. So whether you intentionally developed it or you organically developed it, I want you to write this down. Is the leadership approach I'm using the ones the times require? So whether you intentionally developed it or whether it organically grew up, neither one of those really matters. What matters is the approach you're using to lead other people what the times require. What the times require. Why do I use those words? What the times require. What does that imply? That phrase, what the times require. Things do change over time. What else does it imply? The skills and abilities and competencies to win the battle behind me may not be the skills, abilities, and competencies to win the battle before me. How many of you agree with me times have changed? Give me some ways times have changed.
Technology is unbelievable now.
Before we began, my 9-year-old was FaceTiming me. She's 2,000 kilometers away. Daddy, getting ready to leave. Have a great day. Okay, baby, bye. How many of you know that that little girl, her frame of reference of what the world is like and our frame of reference is what the world is like is completely different? Daddy, I will say goodbye to you and look at you. Where 40 years ago, it was a letter that would take weeks, months, to get. And by the time I would have gotten that letter from her, she would be 2 years older. Am I right or wrong? And in 5 years, it'll be like, Daddy, can I teleport to you before I go to school? Yeah. Ping! Be like, hey, what's up? Okay, good to school now. Okay, bye-bye. Everything that was in Star Trek will eventually be a reality. How many of you know?
Why not?
It will be, right? The tricorder. Right? I know all about you. No. So my point is this. Technology has changed things. Now let's talk about within the municipal setting. What has technology done?
It's broken down a lot of walls.
Okay, on one hand, how many would say that citizens are more sophisticated than they've ever been? And their expectations are unlike ever before. And they can Google and they can Yahoo and they can do whatever and find out how somebody else is doing it better than you and then hold you accountable to that standard, yes or no? I didn't say they were smarter. I didn't say people are smarter. I just said they have more information at their disposal. Technology.
And more information is available.
More information is available than ever before in the history of mankind. Life has become a Tim Hortons drive-up window. Write this down, user-driven. We now live in a user-driven society. What do you mean, Ian? Almost every single institution that your employees or John Q. Public or you interface with give you a say, or at least give you the impression of a say. You could go online right now and design your own car and have it delivered to the Ford dealership in a week. Am I right or wrong? Right now, you could go online. Colors, dashboard, the whole thing, you could design it. Facebook, YouTube, and the like give the sense that you're driving the process. Hell, you can watch a TV show, punch in a couple of numbers, and think you're determining the outcome. How many of you remember a time where the TV show told you when to be there? Told you what time? Remember when we would organize our whole family's day or week or month around a certain time and a certain day to watch a certain show? How many of you know what I'm talking about? How many remember these days you'd be sitting in the chair and your dad would be like, Ian, change the channel. You'd be like, dang, dude. Or how many remember this time? Any big game, I would have to watch it like this. Right? How about today? When can I watch that show? I can not only watch it anytime I want, I can watch it anywhere I want, and I can watch it on any platform I want. And then you wonder why your employees attitudinally push back when you tell them what to do. Because almost every other institution they interface with gives them a say or the impression that they have a say. Is this making sense to anybody in this room right now? Okay, how else have things changed because of technology? How about this? I can get what I want when I want. Let's take, for example, the bank. How many of you remember a day that you and your parents scrambled on Friday afternoon to get to the bank? Because if you didn't get to the bank by 5 o'clock, if it was 5:01, we got no money for the weekend. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Now I can get my money in 495,000 locations, anytime, anywhere. Hell, I can email you money. It's a user-driven society, and leaders must understand that. Now, we could rail against that. We could cross our arms about that. We could rah about that. Or we can say, my employees or the people in the community, almost every other institution they interface with gives them a say or the feeling that they have a say, except for what institution? What's the one institution that hasn't caught on to that yet? Government. Government. It's government. Government hasn't figured that out yet. In some societies. In some societies. How can we give people a say? How can we give people a feeling like they're part of the process and be authentic and sincere about it? That's one of the things that we'll learn over the next 15 weeks. Because on one hand, we can't lose control because government is always going to be hierarchical because of the checks and balances and the public trust. But attitudinally, how can we give people a say in the process? Attitudinally, how can you as an individual leader tap into the collective intelligence of people? And marshal human capital. Write that down, please. Marshal human capital. Marshal human capital. So I'm going to start defining what this leadership philosophy is. This leading others today. Marshaling human capital. In the past, and maybe even in your autobiography, leadership looks something like this. Rick! You better get and you better do. And whether it was that loud or not, that was the attitude behind it. How many of you have been led in your autobiography with that management style? Anybody been led that way? How many of you know that way will not work today? Because what you will get in response is this. Yeah, okay. No problems, buddy. I will work 8 hours a day for the next year against you. How many of you have that t-shirt? Anybody have that t-shirt? So the autocratic leadership approach will no longer marshal human capital today. Today, to marshal human capital, I have to take a different approach. Today, to marshal human capital, I have to build trust. Today, to marshal human capital, I've got to include people in the process. I cannot require, I need to inspire. Today, to marshal human capital, I can't just give a few pep talks. What do I mean by marshal human capital? What do you think I mean by marshal human capital? Those words I choose very specifically.
Bringing the energy this way.
Okay, I'm going to take the best of people and move it towards a common goal. So it looks something like this. I shouldn't have worn these jeans, man. My butt crack is going to be showing every time I get up and down. Excuse me, sorry. Okay, I just say whatever I want. Okay, this is the stated mission of most organizations. That's the stated mission. But within the stated mission of most organizations, usually this is occurring. How many of you ever worked in this place? Don't anybody say, I work there now. Don't say that. Stated mission of the organization, but within the organization, people don't know the goal, people don't know their roles, people don't know what winning looks like. Here's the drill. The drill is, and what I believe in my heart, I do believe this in my heart. You guys will get to know me over the next 15 weeks. If I don't believe in something, I don't do it. And I believe in my heart that Glenn and Brian and the rest are trying and are working for this. That every arrow knows the goal, every arrow knows the role, every arrow knows what winning is. This is called marshaling human capital. But what's human capital? What's human capital? Give me some forms of human capital. Give me some forms of human capital.
Our time.
Time is a form of human capital. Write that down. Time is a form of human capital. Give me some more forms of human capital. Creativity is a form of human capital. There's no way that the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo is going to take on the incredible challenges that it faces to get this to this ideal of building the Athens of the 21st century unless it has some creative people. And that there's a context and environment for creative ideas to bubble up. So creativity is a form of human capital. What else is human capital? Give me some other forms. Time, creativity, what else? Communication, the ability to articulate a message, form of human capital. What else? What's that? Commitment is a form of human capital. What else? Energy. How about this? Sweat. Just sweat is a form of human capital. How about this one? Love. Is love and passion and compassion, are these forms of human capital, yes or no? Innovation, the capacity to be innovative. So here's your challenge as a leader. I can't demand your commitment. I can't demand your creativity. I can't demand your sweat anymore. Things have changed. So how do I get all the arrows going in the right direction? I've got to marshal that human capital. I've got to get a bunch of different, this is your reality here. I've got to get a bunch of different people with a bunch of different backgrounds, talents, experience, and interests. I got to get people from all over the world, all over Canada, all over Alberta, who've come to this place for whatever reason, good or bad, right or wrong, and somehow I got to marshal them in a common direction. And I've got to align their time, talent, treasure, energy, compassion, insight, wisdom, and experience towards a common goal. Otherwise, I'll live in this every day. And how fun is this? How draining is this? How debilitating is this? So the upside to you is you're the key to the success of an organization. You're the mid-level leader. The downside is you're the ones that have got to make this happen. You're the one that's got to make this. Well, the leaders! The leaders! Just because you're not being led properly doesn't absolve you of the responsibility to lead others properly. So, we've got to marshal human capital. What's your name, young lady?
Jennifer.
How do I get Jennifer to give me the best of her ideas, the best of her creativity, the best of her insight, the best of her life experience? How do I do that today? I can't intimidate it out of her. I can't demand it out of her. Times have changed. And not just technology, but trust. How many of you say people are less trusting than they've ever been in your lifetime? Raise your hand if you agree with that. So it's trust. And not just in individuals, but even in public institutions. Things have changed. The diversity of our society, the economics of our society, the trust of our society, the technology of our society, the worldview of people, the family unit, everything has changed. We woke up one day and life went like this. Swing! And some of you went, what in the hell just happened? And I used to be pretty effective as a leader, and now I'm not. And because the 80% of my behavior is unconscious and deeply rooted, I'm having trouble functioning now. And I can't seem to get done from people what I used to be able to get done very easily. And you're in a tough spot because the world changed. The great business guru Peter F. Drucker said this. He said, don't be surprised by that. He said, every couple hundred years in Western history, society rearranges itself. And the society the grandparents knew is completely different than the society the grandchildren know. He called it a time of transformation. Write that down. Because I think if you really did an exploration, you would find that we're in one of those times of transformation. So you can almost guarantee that the leadership approaches you're using probably won't be applicable. Probably won't be applicable. Because the world went schwang. That's the international word for change, young lady, just so you know. The world went schwang. And then you woke up one day and you're like, what happened? I know even me, and I'm not that old. I'm only 47 years old. I walk around sometimes like, what happened? The frame of reference from which I walk and the frame of reference from which people that I'm dealing with walk is completely different. Has anybody ever experienced that? And you're like, what happened? Wow. I can bemoan that, or I can look and see, are the leadership approaches that I'm using the ones the times require? I'm not saying the content of leadership has changed. Treat people with dignity and respect. Work hard. Give all that you have to the people that follow you. Some of those basic principles, would you agree with me? They haven't changed for 2,000 years. They won't change for 2,000 more. It's the context that we're operating in that has changed. Now, for some of you, you're not even aware of the contextual change. But when I started to lay out some anecdotal examples, the TV thing and others, you were like, yeah, things really have changed a lot. That's why I can say you're not bad at what you do. The world may have just changed around you, and you may have not changed your leadership approaches. So again, are the leadership approaches the one that you're using the ones the times require? That is not a mathematical equation. I can't answer that question. Only you can. I just want you to think about it. Are you as effective as you want to be? Because if you're not, it could be because you don't understand what the times require. I'll try to do what I can over the next 15 weeks to make the case that these are the competencies the times require, but eventually you'll have to just choose and see if it applies or not. And some of you will and some of you won't. All I can do is make the case for them and then provide a learning model that if you choose to change, will support you in that change. Why do we hate that word change? Why do we hate that word change?
Uncertainty.
Uncertainty, write that down. Why else do we hate the word change? Fear. Why else do we hate the word change? Risk. Why else do we hate the word change? Tradition. Uncomfortable. How about this one? Old guy down in Longview, Alberta said to me one time, you know why people don't like change? Because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. I thought that was a good one. Somebody else, why don't we like change?
You have to relearn.
Might have to relearn. Here's the tough part. Progress and change are indelibly intertwined. There can be no progress without change. Progress and change are indelibly intertwined. There can be no progress without change. Please write this on a piece of paper somewhere. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. Without going to your smartphone, BlackBerry, iPhone, whatever, what does that equal? 10. 10. How many of you have ever sat in this meeting? All right, everybody, we got to change some things around here. Things have got to we got a little crisis. We got to change some things. Now, let's hear some ideas. And somebody yells out, put the 2 first. Okay, 2 first. All right, anybody else? Another idea. How about then the 1? Yeah, great idea. And then the 4, Ian, then the 4. Oh, yeah, and then what? The 3. Then put the 3. Okay, awesome. And everybody starts high-fiving. Oh, that's great change. Awesome, great meeting, wonderful meeting. Good job, good job, good job. What's the answer? How many of you ever sat in that meeting? Nothing changed. Because nothing changed. So if you want to be better at the end of this 15 weeks than you were today, something's going to have to change. Einstein said it maybe even more succinctly. He said that everything within us was only enough to get us to where we're at today. If we want to go any further, if we want to be any better, something's going to have to. Now, he had a funny haircut, but he was one of the smartest guys that ever lived. And he knew even he had to change. But you don't need to be sick to get better. I'm not saying you're not great at what you do. I'm just saying it is a fundamental fact the world has gone schwang, which makes me as a leader stop and say to myself, wow, the world around me is going schwang every day, and I better ask myself, are the leadership approaches the ones that times require, the ones that I'm using, the ones that times require? Because I have a responsibility to marshal human capital. And because I work in the public sector, I know we touch every citizen from cradle to grave, so my leadership is even more important because we're not making widgets every day. So I've got to ensure that the leadership approaches I'm using are definitely what the times require, because there's so many citizens and employees and the next generation that's counting on me to do so. So this first 3 weeks is going to be a lot of, wow, what is my leadership style? What is my leadership approach? Am I using what the times require? And so on and so on and so on. Change. We don't want to change because we're nervous, because we're afraid. We don't want to change because we're stuck in our ways. We don't want to change usually because we don't understand the value of changing. Write down 3 names right now that if you changed one thing in your life, they would benefit. Write down 3 names right now that if you change something in your life, you know they would benefit. Maybe it's your spouse. Maybe it's your kid. Maybe it's yourself. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe it's an employee. If there was something in your approach, your style, the way you did things, that if you changed it, their life would be better. 3 names. Write them down. 3 names. Why am I having you write down these 3 names? Why do you think I'm having you write down these 3 names? Come on, why?
The correlation between something positive and affecting someone.
That's right. Because this isn't about you, man. This isn't, if Glenn and Brian had asked me to do some goofy leadership program where all we were doing was trying to, we'll talk some leadership concept. This is about changing the world. That's the intensity level I'm coming at this with. As we speak, who's with the any RCMP guys or gals in here? Raise your hand. How about this? Somewhere in a 200-kilometer radius, is someone making crystal meth and they want to sell it to our kids here in Fort McMurray? Yes or no? Yes. How many of you would agree that that is true? And how many of you would also agree with me, somewhere in a 500-kilometer radius, there's a pedophile trying to figure out a new and innovative way to snatch my little girl off a playground? Yes or no? This is not a game. This is not a joke. And in your community, people are coming literally from all over the world to reach their dreams and goals. They're bringing their kids. They're bringing everything they have, and they think that the streets are paved with gold. And they think that they're going to find a community that's thriving and full of vibrancy and excitement. So let's give that to them. That's where I'm coming from in this thing. So changing, who are the 3 people that would benefit from you being a little bit better? But remember, you don't need to be sick to get better. So I'm not hammering you. I'm not saying you're a failure. I'm not saying you need remedial training. I'm just saying things have changed and who could benefit. Anybody brave enough to share with me who one of those people might be?
My wife.
Your wife. What's her name?
Janine.
Janine's life would be better if he changes something. Somebody else brave enough to share.
Myself.
You'd be better. Okay, somebody else.
A nonprofit organization.
Your nonprofit organization, which I know not only has an impact here, but has an impact around the world. I thank you guys that were willing to share for sharing. My point is, guys, come on. Let's not take a 15-week journey together where we're just going through the motions. Let's all pick out one thing. Let's get a little bit better at it, knowing that someone else's life is going to be better because of it. Would you say that's a noble and honorable task? That's a noble and honorable task. Ian, come on, dude. I'm already overwhelmed in life. I ain't got time for this journey. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. If you're not up for it, then I get you. I'm okay with that. Now, if you're in a situation where you have to do this because someone's not going to let you out, well, then we got to do the best that we can. If you're not up for this right now because life is overwhelming, like I had a guy email me the other day that said, I can't do this, life is overwhelming. And my response back was, maybe you need to do this so I can help you make it so life isn't overwhelming, so we can equip you with tools and resources to help you mitigate the challenges of life. I don't know where you're at personally. All I'm saying is this. If you want tomorrow to be better than yesterday, then you got to be willing to change. On Monday morning, I'm going to give you a process for changing. On Monday morning, I'll give you a process for changing. That's the beauty of 3 weeks. I don't have to dump a ton of information on you today. On Monday morning, you're going to get a thing that I call the Change Continuum. It's a 6-step process for changing. Where did it come from? Failure, extreme and total failure in my life. Financial failure, moral failure, failure, complete and total failure. You will never sleep in this house, voice of my wife kind of failure. So get out. That kind of failure. And I knew I needed to change, but I had no idea how to change. So we went and did as much research as we possibly could about changing. And you'll get to enjoy the fruit of that labor. Because I don't think that just trying harder is an effective strategy. How many of you have had a deficiency pointed out to you and you said, I'll just try harder? I'll just put in some more time. I'll just come in on a Saturday. And then that becomes routine. And then you say, oh, I'll just come in for 2 hours on a Sunday. Or I'll take some work home. Or the next thing you know, I'll just try harder isn't effective. So it must not be effort. I don't think it's effort. I think it's you got to have a process. So we'll give you a very linear step-by-step process that when you see a deficiency, either you have it pointed out or you see it in yourself, you can rectify it. There's a skill that you know you need to acquire. You can acquire it. That you become adaptable. That when a change is needed, you can push it through a process for changing. By show of hands, who thinks that would be a nice tool to have in your toolkit? On Monday morning, you'll get an email. And you might say at the end of that 8-9 minute video, I don't like your change process, chubby brown man. And I will look back at you and say this, I don't care. Just get one. So you might not agree with my change process, but I would suggest to you in these changing times, it would be in your best interest for your mental health, for your physical health, for your leadership ability to have a process for changing. Somebody share with me the process you use today when you want to change something in yourself. Hold on, stop for a second. That was almost angelic. Obviously, I am, thank you. Obviously, right? Yeah, it wasn't some Moroccan thing. It was like angels were like saying, hey, Ian's right. So somebody, if you guys haven't figured out that I'm ADD yet, you better get on board with that because it's going to be like this for the next 15 weeks. So somebody tell me the process you use for changing now. Okay, work with people, not against them. But somebody walk me through the linear steps you take when you see a deficiency, when you want to acquire a new skill. Somebody walk me through the steps you take. Okay, first you analyze the issue. Very good. Then?
2, I surround myself with good people to come up with solutions and options.
Okay.
3, I put the show on the road, so to speak, trying to get buy-in.
Right.
And 4, we implement.
Okay.
5, we circle the wagons one more time to make sure we're doing and walking the talk.
How many say that's a pretty sound linear process? It's pretty good. How long you been doing this? Too many years. 20, 30, 28, something like that? 2.5 months short of 35. So he's a well-heeled leader, seasoned professional who over a period of time has created this linear steps that he knows when there's an issue, a challenge, and a change needs to occur, he's going to walk through those steps. Some of you might have something similar. Some of you might not have anything at all. I'm just saying you better have a process. Why do you think it's so important to have a process that's linear, that can be explained to others? Yes? Okay, provide structure, which provides safety and security to some degree. You can control it to some degree. How about this? Would you agree with me that one of your roles as supervisor, manager, leader is to teach? Yeah. So if you have, well, Ian, I don't need to learn this because I know how to do it. But if you can't put words to it, if it can't be laid out in some sequence, it's difficult to instill it in another human being. So once I become a leader, I'm no longer just responsible for my own performance. I'm responsible for the performance of those around me. And if it would be beneficial for you to know how to change things, wouldn't it be beneficial for your people? So all the more reason why you must have a linear process so that I can teach it to another human being, laying it out sequentially. So on Monday morning, you'll get an email about the change continuum. Watch it. It will come in handy later because when I ask you to pick out the one thing, then you have a process to follow. All right, turn the page. Now remember, we're on a journey. It's 3 weeks at a time, so I don't have to cover everything today because we have 3 weeks to unpack. So let me give you some insight into what's coming. On Monday morning, you're going to get that email, Change Continuum. It'll have some text. It'll have a video. It'll try to revisit some of the concepts, getting you to look introspectively within yourself. And it'll specifically talk about the Change Continuum. The next Monday, I guess it won't be this Monday because it's Easter break. No, Yes, it'll be Tuesday. Sorry, it'll be Tuesday. So on Tuesday, you'll get an email. The following Monday, I'm going to ask you to do an exercise. An exercise. It's called the Leadership History Survey. It's in your packet. But I also know some of you will forget, and I'll send it along. Leadership History Survey. It's 12 questions. 12 questions. I will ask you to do it that week. Now, some of you will say, I don't have time to sit down and write up 12 questions. I don't have time. No problems. At minimum, I want you to take a couple questions a day and think about them. Think about them. And then in that coaching session, I'll explain what it can mean. See, the theory here is, I think you need to look back before you can move forward. So how did you become the leader you are now? Who were the influencers, individuals, people, who made an impact, good and bad? How many of you promised yourself you'd never be your mom or dad and you've become your mom or dad? So who are the influencers and how has that affected your leadership style? And is that serving you well? What were the circumstances? You ever wonder why you sit in a meeting and there's certain people that you gravitate to and there's certain people that just offend you and they don't even open their mouths? You ever wonder why there's certain environments where you perform best and other environments where you just seem to fail? Well, I think this Leadership History Survey can give you some insight to that. 12 questions. Some of them are pretty direct. Where did you grow up, and what kind of family, and what was your relationship with your first boss? We're going to ask you who your best boss was. We're going to ask you who your worst boss was. Don't share that with anybody. 12 questions. That'll be the second week. And the idea here is, what's your name again, sir? James. The idea is that James looks within himself and he's like, who influenced me? What circumstances? What situations? And are those influences serving me well today? Because maybe the answer is what? No. And if it's no, I got to unwind that. You got to unwind that so that we can journey forward. You're not going to turn that in. You're just going to do it. And if you don't have time to write it, fine, I'm good with that. Take 3 and then in that coaching session, we will unpack its meaning. All right, we've got 10 minutes left. I think before you can take a journey, you also have to take an inventory. So what's an inventory? What's an inventory?
Taking account.
Taking account. What else is an inventory? If you were going to go on a journey and you did an inventory of what you needed, right? You would make a list of the things you need for the journey, or you might make a list of what you have, so you could do an evaluation of if you're set up for the journey. How many of you have ever done that? Okay. Well, I think that oftentimes, by the time we get to be the age that we all are, we've taken an inventory. And sometimes in our own minds, we come up a little short. I happen to believe in the human capacity. I believe in the human potential. I'm a shining example of how somebody can have very, very little and do a lot. All of the tests that I took when I was in school said I was developmentally delayed. I couldn't read till I was 17, 18 years old in any meaningful way. I barely graduated from high school, as I said to you earlier. Last year, I was nominated for the Prime Minister's Social Innovator of the Year in Canada. Is that a reflection of me? No, because I'm not very smart, sir. I don't have much skill. I don't have much capacity. But I believe in human potential. I know that most of you in this room are more educated than I am. I know that most of you in this room are probably smarter than me. My brain doesn't work like your brain works. But that doesn't mean I can't do something with my life. My history is not my destiny. And the same is true for you. A long time ago, a guy forced me to sit down and take inventory of who I was and what I was. He explained to me that there was 70 billion people that lived on this planet, and that there was nobody like me. There'd never been anybody like me, and that there would never be anybody like me. I was one of those kind of people that didn't believe that I had much value or worth. I had been adopted off the streets of a Middle Eastern country and brought to North America by a United States Air Force sergeant. My adopted mother died when I was 5. My adopted father, although he was a decorated veteran, probably wasn't the greatest dad in the world, and he left when I was about 13. And I found myself in a lot of different homes with a lot of different people. So my own self-image was pretty poor. Because some of those people who were charged with my care took full advantage of me in ways that I can't even talk about. So I didn't have the greatest self-image. And this guy sat down with me and he said this. He said, do you know how many people have lived on the planet? I said, no. He said, 70 billion people have lived on the planet, Ian. And he said, there's never been anybody like you. He said, there'll never be anybody like you. He said, you're a rare and unique creature with incredible talent and ability, Ian. And I still didn't understand. He could see that I didn't understand. So he took off his watch. He took off his watch and he said, Ian, if there was 70 billion of this watch, and there was one that was rare and unique, one that was handcrafted and handmade, Ian, how much would the special one be worth? I'll ask you the same question. If there was 70 billion of this watch, one that was rare and unique, one that was handcrafted and handmade, how much would the special one be worth? How much? It'd be priceless. Now look, I don't care what your mama said. I don't care what the teacher said. I don't care what your spouse says. I don't care what your employees say. I don't care what the little voice in your head says. You're priceless. That's a scientific fact. And I think that's the essence of leadership in my mind. Because when I see that another human being has something to offer, now I've just got to figure out a way to marshal that human capital. Yeah, but you don't know the people that I lead. They're all a bunch of rockheads. Well, I'm a rockhead. You know how I know about this leadership thing? Because I was a horrible leader. In my first leadership role, all the employees signed a petition to get me fired. That's a true story. Because I was a horrible leader. But over a period of time, people taught me and grew me, and I became better at it. And I now believe in my heart of hearts that it all begins with me seeing that you're a rare and unique creature with incredible talent and ability. I just got to figure out a way to get it out. And maybe that is a pat on the back. And every once in a while, maybe that is a little kick in the bum. What do you believe? Do you believe in people? Do you believe in your own potential and your own capacity? Or has life beaten you down and kicked you around that you become so jaded and crusty that you don't believe tomorrow can be better than it was yesterday? How many of you know some jaded and crusty people? How many of you are jaded? No, don't tell me. I don't want to. What do you believe? So we're going to take a quick second and we're going to do a quick inventory. Quick inventory. It was written by a guy named Og Mandino. I love Og Mandino. Listen to what he said. He said, are you blind? And as far as I can tell, most of you in this room have sight. He said, no, you can see. 100 million receptors have been placed in your eyes, enable you to enjoy the magic of a leaf, a snowflake, a pond, an eagle, a child, a cloud, a star, a rose, a rainbow, and the look of love. He went on to write, can you hear? From what I can tell, most of you have the capacity to hear. He said, if you hear, that means you have 24,000 receptors in your ears that vibrate and translate sound to meaning. Somehow, guys, sound is translated into meaning in your brain. Think about that. That's incredible. How about your mouth? Can you speak? From what I can see, most of you can. My little boy, he doesn't speak. His name's Kian. He doesn't speak. He has a thing called autism. You know how hard it is to be a guy that can talk a dog off a meat truck? Man, I can talk a dog off a meat truck. I had a guy in Texas tell me that one time. He's like, you could talk a dog off a meat truck. And then he took like 3 steps away. He lifted his cowboy hat up and he said, I mean a hungry dog. Well, my little boy don't speak, but you can. You know what that means? That means you have the ability to lift the quitter. That means that you can take the despondent and bring some cheer and hope to them. That means you can use your words to build and engage. That means you can use your words to say, I love you, and you have meaning to me. You can do what no other animal on the planet can do. Use your words to build another person up. Or you can use your words to make a cutting comment in a meeting. You can use your words to make a flippant remark that embarrasses somebody. Oh, everybody in the room laughs, but at somebody else's expense. You have the capacity to speak. From what I can tell, all of you are mobile. You have the capacity to use your arms and your legs. You have hundreds of muscles and thousands of nerves and 108 bones and 208 bones that all move at your beckoning. You don't even have to think and it moves. How about your skin? You know that there's no gold in the world that's protected like the way your skin protects you. thousands of heat sensors and pain receptors, and all you got to do is put a little water on it. All you got to do is put a little oil on it, and it takes care. And it remakes itself over and over again in your lifetime. How about your brain? You know that your brain, that everything you've ever seen, everything you've ever heard, everything you've ever thought, everything you've ever learned is there? There's no computer in the world that can touch your brain. I am dumb as a box of rocks, and yet there's no computer in the world that can touch my brain. Take an inventory of who you are. You have the capacity to take on the challenges of this community. You have the capacity to take on the challenges of your department. You have the capacity to take on the challenges of your own personal life. I know you do. And you know how I know that to be a fact? Because we could line the walls of people that were in worse circumstances than you and have made it. Am I right or wrong? But what do you believe? Do you believe tomorrow can be better than yesterday? You believe that we can do something special here in Fort McMurray? Or are you just trading time for money? How many of you know somebody in your workplace is just trading time for money? Citizens deserve better than that. That 4-year-old little boy that I met the other day, a couple weeks ago here in Fort McMurray, they deserve better than that. Them kids up in Fort Chip, they deserve better than that. Those kids down to Conklin Community School, they deserve better than that. They deserve better than that. People who everything they do touches them in some kind of meaningful way. The municipality. They deserve better than a bunch of guys and gals trading time for money. How many of you would concur? Yeah. This isn't a game or a joke to me, man. You're important. And what do you believe about you? Do you have the capacity? I believe you do. But what do you believe? Look at what he wrote at the bottom. He wrote that you are one of a kind, rarest of the rare, a priceless treasure, possessed of the qualities of mind, speech, movement, appearance, and actions as no other who has ever lived, lives, or will live. That's you. That's you, and that's what I see in you. And that's what I see in all the 75,000, 80,000 citizens, and thousands of others that live in camps and other rural, Fort McKay, Janvier, Conklin, all the way up to Fort Fitzgerald, which I have not been there and I want to go fishing. Just throw that out there. Anybody wants to go? Go in the summer. Very good. What do you believe? Okay, final. Not today. Not today. But these 5 questions you will turn into me. Not today. And not anytime soon. I think they're the 5 most urgent questions of a leader that a leader can answer today. They're right on the last page. Last page. You don't have to answer them today. I just want you to start thinking about them. Somebody read the first question as we wrap up. Somebody read the first question.
What will be your greatest contributions to your family?
I think that too many times, one of the things that have changed in leadership today is how many of you agree with me that leaders today, the impression is that they're only serving themselves. How many of you are fed up with leaders that are only serving themselves? Did you know that they've done a survey for years now, like 40 years in North America, they've done a survey. They've done a survey of people's belief in leaders of all sectors. And do you know that this last survey was the lowest in the history of the 40 years? And that's not just elected officials. That's corporate leaders, elected leaders, faith leaders. People just have a low opinion of leaders across the board. Does anybody share that opinion? I think we've got to move from leaders that thought about themselves to leaders that think about others. So the first question is, what will be your greatest contribution to your family? Somebody read the second question.
What will be your greatest contributions to those you serve?
So why are those that you're serving better off because you're serving them? What are you bringing that's unique and different and special? And what will be lasting through your service? Question number 3. Somebody read it, please.
What will be your greatest contributions to those you've led?
So your employees, whether you were with them for 3 months or you're with them for 30 years, why are they better off because you're their leader? How have you brought a more enjoyable, more enhanced, more effective, more efficient workplace? Where they're spending a majority of their life, why are they better off because you have led them? Next, somebody read the next one.
What will be your greatest contributions to your organization?
So there's a lot of stuff. Hey, you know, they recruit you here, they bring you here. If your house doesn't sell for the same price, they'll fulfill the difference, and all kinds of crazy stuff that municipalities would never think about offering their employees. How many of you agree with that? In exchange for what? A crazy work environment, things are always changing, direction stuff and things, and busy and hectic and all kinds of stuff. Well, don't be surprised by that. That's just the nature of what happens through rapid growth and expansion in the largest industrial project in the history of mankind. So hopefully you came into this thing eyes wide open, Rick. Come on, right? You're in the largest industrial project in the history of mankind. It wasn't going to be like this, y'all. But we complain. How many people? This sucks. And blah, 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 blah. But what will be your greatest contribution to this organization? Why is this organization better because of you? And why are the citizens that it serves better because of you? Somebody read the last one.
What will be your greatest contributions to your community?
Why is this planet better because I live? Did I just take from this place, or did I give something back? Are kids' lives better because of me? Seniors' lives better because of me? Well, Ian, I'm just doing my thing, man. Don't put the whole world on my shoulders. Well, I'm not asking you to do everything. In this hour and 40 minutes, have I asked you to do everything? Yes or no? What have I asked you to do? That's all I've asked you to do. If you boil it down, I've always said, all you're going to do is pick out one thing, right, Bill? That's all I'm asking. So what will be your greatest contribution to your community or your society? I call these life's 5 most urgent questions for a leader. And I think that leaders that put these questions in the forefront of their mind every day are going to be more effective in these changing times. What do you notice about these questions as we now wind down? Got about a minute and a half left. So somebody tell me, what do you notice about those questions?
Contribution, the same word, 5 times.
Contribution. What am I going to give? I think the times call for leaders that are willing to give, not for leaders that will take. I think in today's day and age, if you want to marshal human capital, followers long for a leader that is willing to give of themselves and ask nothing in return. People are ready. They're ready to give their time, talent, and treasure. They're just looking for a leader that's willing to give, not take. What else do you notice about these questions? What else do you notice about the questions? What are you going to do? Okay, somebody else, what do you notice about them? What do you notice about them in their essence? They work from inside out, right? They start close and ripple out, and they're all proactive. What will you do? They act as a lighthouse. They act as a true north. Now, all of us have a different worldview. All of us have a different spiritual experience, faith experience, and all that. But all studies show that if I can proactively put out a lighthouse to where I'm headed, a true north, I'm going to be a more effective leader. So whether that's your faith or whether that's a simple exercise like this, you need that to point to of where you're headed. How many of you want to follow somebody that has no idea where they're going? Or would you rather have somebody that at least has an idea of where they'd like to go in life? Would you rather follow that leader? Of course you would. Life's 5 most urgent questions. You will not turn those in today or anytime soon, but before we are all done, I'll ask you to turn them in. Why?
Because you want us to commit.
I want you to commit to something. I'm not telling you what to commit to. I just want you to be a principled leader that will commit to something. All right. Somebody tell me something you're taking away from today. Ian, you said it was a minute and a half. I know. I'm adding another minute and a half. Somebody tell me something you're taking away from today.
Own your own life.
Got to own your own life. Somebody else. Something you're taking. Commit to the process. That's it. Sir, excellent, excellent, excellent. That if this thing's going to really be effective for you, you got to commit to the process. Well said. Somebody else. Something you're taking away from today.
We are unique, priceless.
You are. You are. And I don't know why the world wants to beat the hell out of that, beat that out of us. Just beat us down into the ground and beat that feeling out of us. But it does. I don't know why, but it does. But you are somebody special. And so are our kids and employees. All right, somebody else. Yes, Rick? $20 from the Center of Hope and all you other people. And if you weren't fine today, you just want to pony up. I think the most we ever raised last year, I think we raised like a couple $100 for a charity in one day. People just ponied up. And you'll always notice that I'll pony up first. Somebody else, something you're taking away from today. Why do I ask the question? Motivate. Why do I ask the question, what are you taking away from today? What's that?
Make you think about it.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with checking to see if you got anything, because I don't care. I mean, your life is on you, not me. I do the best I can, and then it's up to you. But the reason I ask the question is be intentional in your learning. That's why the first exercise I had you do was tell me what you want out of this so I can make sure you get it. So if you haven't answered those 3 questions, please send them to me so I know what you want to gain. And I'll make sure that I do the best and we do the best we possibly can that you learn that. And I'll also be honest with you if we're not going to teach you that and maybe give you some places that you could go. So every time we come for the rest of the 15 weeks, our learning is intentional. That's why I'm saying, what are you taking from today? So at least you took one thing from today. That way it was worth your time. And I know that there was enough things that you could take one thing. Any other questions or comments? Sorry for the disjointed start. The next time that we meet face-to-face will be in the Elements room, which is on the other side of the cafeteria. From what I understand, there's coffee and water out there now, so take some on your way out. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your